He wore broken shoes and a borrowed smile. The world laughed at him, mocked his walk, his poverty, his quiet dignity. But behind those tired eyes was a secret strength most people never understood. Charlie Chaplin was knocked down more times than anyone could count. Hungry nights, empty pockets, doors slammed in his face. And yet, he rose every single time. Not with anger, not with bitterness, but with something braver, gentleness. Before he died, he left the world one final message, words so simple, so human, they still break hearts today. This is that story. He stood at the corner of a street that never slept, in shoes that had walked far more miles than they were ever meant to carry. The soles were thin, the laces were frayed, but he stood tall anyway, because that was the only thing left that was truly his. The city moved around him like a machine that had forgotten it was built by human hands. Cars rushed past without looking, doors closed without a sound. Somewhere above, tall buildings stretched toward the sky, cold and indifferent, as if they too had forgotten how to smile. This was a world in a hurry, a world that measured people not by their hearts, but by their usefulness. He did not fit neatly into that world. His coat was too big, his hat too small, and his pockets, more often than not, were empty. But he walked with a strange kind of dignity, chin slightly raised, as if to say, I may have nothing, but I am still here. People pushed past him on the sidewalk. Some didn't see him at all. He was simply another shadow among many, blending into the gray noise of the city. Others saw him too well and laughed. They laughed at his walk, his clothes, his clumsy attempts to hold on to a little pride in a world that offered him none. Their laughter was sharp, but he had learned painfully how to let it slide off him like rain off an old umbrella. Machines groaned and clattered in the factories nearby, swallowing men whole and spitting them back out exhausted at the end of long days. The rhythm of iron and steel had replaced the rhythm of human voices. Nobody asked how you were. Nobody had the time. Life had become a conveyor belt, and if you couldn't keep up, you were simply left behind. He knew what it meant to be left behind. He knew hunger, the quiet, patient kind that doesn't shout, but simply waits in your stomach like an old friend who overstays his welcome. He knew cold nights on hard benches, staring up at a sky that offered no answers, only stars too distant to care. He knew what it felt like to knock on doors that never opened, to ask for work and receive only silence, or worse, a shake of the head that said, without words, you don't matter here. And yet, and this is the strange, quiet miracle of him, he did not let the world's coldness enter his heart. Somewhere behind those tired eyes, dimmed by hardship but never fully extinguished, a small flame kept burning. It was not loud, it was not proud, but it was persistent, like a candle refusing to go out in the wind. Each morning, no matter how heavy the night before had been, he rose. He straightened his crooked hat, dusted off his worn coat, and took his first step of the day, not because he was certain things would get better, but because stopping was the only true defeat. The road rarely rewarded him. More often, it offered only more struggle, more silence, more indifference. But he kept walking anyway. Perhaps it was foolish. Perhaps the world would call it naive. But deep inside, in that quiet corner of the heart, where hope refuses to be reasoned with, he believed, truly believed, that tomorrow could be different. Not because he had proof, not because life had shown him kindness, but because believing was the only thing poverty could never take from him. And so he walked on, small against the towering city, laughed at by strangers, ignored by many, broken in body but not in spirit, carrying within him the simplest, most stubborn kind of hope, that somewhere ahead, even for a man like him, kindness was still possible. Then, one day, something shifted. It was not a grand moment. No music swirled, no light broke through the clouds. It happened quietly, the way most true changes do in the stillness after another hard fall, when he sat alone on a cracked stone step, too tired to run from his own pain any longer. For so long he had done what most people do. He had turned away from his sorrow, buried it beneath busyness, beneath forced smiles, beneath the simple act of moving forward so quickly that feeling could never catch up to him. But that day, exhausted in every sense a person can be exhausted, he stopped. And for the first time, he let himself truly look at the pain he had been carrying. It was heavier than he had imagined. Years of hunger, years of closed doors, years of laughter aimed at him instead of shared with him. He expected, looking at it so directly, to be crushed. Something strange happened instead. As he sat with his pain, without running, without pretending, he began to understand it. And in understanding it, he began to understand the world that had caused it. He realized slowly that the world had not been cruel to him out of hatred. Nobody had risen each morning plotting his downfall. No, the truth was quieter and somehow sadder. The world was cruel because it was tired too, because it was frightened too, because somewhere along the way, in the noise of machines and the rush of ambition, it had simply forgotten how to love. People were not pushing him aside because they despised him. They were pushing everyone aside, including themselves, in a blind hurry toward nowhere. This understanding did not excuse the pain, but it softened it. It turned his anger, which had been quietly simmering beneath his patched coat, into something else, entirely something he had not expected. Compassion. He could have chosen bitterness. Bitterness would have been easy, even justified. He could have let the years of mockery harden him, could have decided that if the world was cold, he would be colder still. Many in his place might have chosen exactly that, but he chose differently. He chose gentleness. And he understood in that moment that gentleness was not the same as weakness. It was not surrender. It was not the quiet giving up of a man too tired to fight. No, gentleness, real gentleness, was the bravest choice of all. It was far easier to close your heart than to keep it open in a world that had given you every reason to shut it forever. It took no courage to sneer back at those who sneered at him, but to still hold a door for a stranger, to still offer his last coin to someone hungrier than himself, to still tip his hat and smile at a world that so rarely smiled back, that took a quiet, unshakable kind of strength. He began to see the people around him differently too. The ones who had laughed at him, perhaps they were laughing because their own lives had left them no other way to release their soul. The ones who pushed past him on the street, perhaps they were running from pains of their own, pains he could not see. Everyone, he realized, was fighting some invisible battle. And so very few of them had anyone to be gentle with them at all. That was the lesson the pain had been trying to teach him all along. The world did not need more strength, more machines, more power, more speed. It had plenty of all these things, and still it suffered. What it needed, what it had always needed, was more heart, more small kindnesses, more people willing to notice each other, even briefly, in the middle of their hurry. And so he rose from that cracked step, still poor, still small, still wearing his tired shoes, but changed. Not because his circumstances had improved, but because his heart had opened wider than his hardship. He would meet the world's coldness with warmth, its indifference with attention, its cruelty with an unreasonable, stubborn kindness, not because it was easy, but because it was, quite simply, the right way to be. So if you are tired tonight, truly tired, the kind of tired that sleep cannot fix, know that you are not alone in this. Somewhere, long ago, a small man in worn-out shoes stood exactly where you are standing now. He knew that tiredness too. He knew the ache of carrying a heavy heart through days that offered no rest, no thanks, no pause. And if you feel unseen, if you have ever walked through a crowded room and felt invisible, felt as though the world simply looked past you, he knew that too. He spent years being overlooked, stepped over, forgotten in the shuffle of a world that was always in a hurry to be somewhere else. If you have been laughed at for the way you speak, the way you dream, the way you dare to hope, in a world that often mocks hope as foolishness, take heart, because he was laughed at more than most. They laughed at his walk. They laughed at his coat, his hat, his awkward stumbling attempts to hold on to dignity in a world that rarely offered him any. But here is the secret he carried. Quietly, in his chest, through every one of those laughing crowds, even the smallest men can carry the biggest light. You do not need to be tall to stand tall. You do not need to be powerful to be strong. Sometimes the ones who carry the most light are exactly the ones the world overlooks: the tired, the poor, the laughed at, the ones who keep getting up anyway. That light is not loud. It does not announce itself. But it is real, and it is enough. Life will knock you down. This is not a warning, it is simply the truth. The same truth he lived 1,000 times over. He fell in the streets. He fell in love and lost it. He fell into poverty so deep it swallowed his pride whole. He fell again and again in ways both large and small, in ways the world saw and in ways it never did. But here is what he understood. In the marrow of his bones, every fall was not the end of his story. It was only a part of it. Each time he hit the ground, something in him softened rather than hardened. Each fall taught him a little more patience, a little more understanding, a little more quiet wisdom about what truly mattered. He rose each time a bit differently than he had fallen, a little gentler, a little wiser, a little more himself. The falling was never the failure. Staying down would have been. And so, if you take nothing else from his story, take this: you do not need applause to matter. You do not need the world to clap for you, to notice you, to celebrate you, in order for your life to hold value. Your worth was never up for their vote. And you do not need perfection to be loved, not by others, and certainly not by yourself. He was never perfect. His shoes were broken. His pockets were empty. His plans so often failed. And still, across all these years, across all these generations, the world has loved him, not despite his imperfections, but somehow, softly, because of them. So keep walking, even when the road is unkind, even when the rain falls sideways and the wind has no mercy. Keep that small, stubborn smile on your face, not because everything is fine, but because you have decided, quietly and bravely, that you will not let the hardness of the world make you hard too. Keep walking the way he walked, with worn-out shoes and an unbroken heart. Because tomorrow, tired as you are, unseen as you may feel, laughed at as you have been tomorrow, is always worth it.